under the vast dome of the heavens, before rivers sang across the land, and before rain learned to fall, the world rested in silence. The air was dry, heavy with the ache of waiting, and even the gods whispered in tones of thirst. The earth, parched and patient, dreamed of water, but had never known its caress. Mountains stood like sentinels of stone, eternal yet incomplete, their summits untouched by mist. The wind carried only dust, and life clung to its edges like a fading memory. In that still expanse, creation yearned, not for fire, not for light, but for flow. It longed for something soft and eternal, something that could soothe the rigid pulse of existence. It longed for her. High beyond mortal sight, in the luminous realms where sound turned to music and light moved like thought, there was born a being of impossible grace. Ganga, not yet a river, but a spirit of movement and purity, drifted between worlds, her essence shimmering like liquid moonlight. She was not bound by form or space. She was the sigh of creation, the pulse between the stars. The gods beheld her and saw beauty that could cleanse even their immortal weariness. Her laughter rippled through the heavens like gentle rain, her presence a promise of renewal. Yet beneath her radiance was something deeper, a loneliness as vast as the sky she inhabited. She flowed, but she had nowhere to go. There was no earthly bed to receive her, no soil to cradle her current, no hearts to feel her touch. The world below was still and dry, untouched by tenderness, and so she remained aloft, a goddess of potential, pure but restless. She gazed down at the sleeping earth and felt a stirring she could not name. It was not pity, nor merely duty. It was desire, a yearning to descend, to pour herself into something greater than solitude, to feel her essence mingle with the mortal world. In her stillness was a pulse of longing that echoed through time, an ache both divine and sensual, the ache of creation itself. The gods spoke often of her. Some praised her serenity, others feared her force. For though she seemed soft as silk, within her dwelt a power vast enough to shatter worlds. She could cleanse or destroy, bless or drown. Such was the paradox of her being. Brahma, the creator, looked upon her and saw balance, beauty in motion, destruction made sacred. Vishnu saw in her the eternal rhythm that sustains existence, and Shiva, the silent ascetic, closed his eyes and felt the tremor of her name vibrate through his meditation, awakening something ancient within his still heart. Yet even among the divine, Ganga remained apart. The celestial realm adored her, yet none could truly touch her. She was both near and untouchable, a song sung by the stars, too pure for embrace. For all her splendor, she felt the ache of being unfulfilled. To flow endlessly through the heavens without a destination was a kind of captivity, a slow ache beneath her luminous surface. She began to dream of gravity, of being pulled down, of surrender. Far below, the cries of mortals rose in thin threads toward the heavens. Generations had passed under a sky that withheld its blessing. The soil cracked and split. The rivers that once tried to form dried before their first song. Humanity learned to pray not for gold or victory, but for a single drop of grace. Their yearning drifted upward, invisible yet potent, until it reached the realm where Ganga shimmered. She heard their voices, faint but sincere, and something within her quivered. Their longing was not unlike her own. She drifted closer to the veil between heaven and earth, where clouds gathered but never wept. The air trembled around her form. She saw the mortal plains stretched like open palms, waiting. In their thirst, she saw a mirror of herself, the same emptiness, the same desire to be filled. And for the first time, she understood that her descent was not merely a gift to the world, it was also her liberation. Yet, even as she leaned toward the earth, a whisper of fear lingered. For what is purity once it mingles with dust? What becomes of divinity when it surrenders to imperfection? The celestial halls murmured her name. The gods knew what such a descent would mean. If she fell unrestrained, her current would break the very bones of the earth. No mountain could bear her, no valley could contain her. Her beauty would destroy as easily as it could save. And so, though the world thirsted for her, none dared call her down. Her touch was both promise and peril, and she, radiant and yearning, waited for a voice bold enough to summon her, for a soul strong enough to hold her. In the stillness of the heavens, Ganga began to drift in slow, sensual arcs, her body made of light and motion. She traced invisible rivers through the air, each curve a sigh, each ripple a question. The stars reflected on her skin like scattered jewels, and she thought of how they would look mirrored in water upon the earth. Every shimmer she cast downward was a secret invitation, a soft beckoning that called not just to gods, but to mortals, to anyone who could understand the language of longing. In the beginning, she was only light and movement, but when the divine wind touched her essence, she took form. Ganga emerged as both river and goddess, a being of fluid grace and living radiance. Her hair flowed like silver threads through starlight, her eyes deep as moonlit pools. When she breathed, the air shimmered. When she moved, the cosmos swayed in rhythm. She was untamed yet pure, sensual yet sacred, a current that could soothe or devour, a whisper that could calm or awaken. Her beauty was not that of stillness, but of motion, endless and irresistible. Even the gods, in their immortal detachment, turned their gaze when she passed. She was the song of all waters waiting to be born, the divine rhythm that pulsed beneath creation's skin. But for all her splendor, Ganga was bound by longing. She felt herself overflowing, her essence yearning for release. Her soul ached for purpose beyond the shimmering stillness of the heavens. Every ripple of her form sang of surrender, of a descent that might finally give her meaning. She desired not to reign, but to merge, to be touched, to be needed, to feel her divinity dissolve into something mortal and vast. The stars adored her, yet their admiration could not warm her solitude. The gods spoke her name with reverence, yet none dared approach too closely, for within her grace lay the shadow of destruction. She was too sacred to be held, too fierce to be confined. In the silence below, a mortal heart was being shaped by destiny. Bhagiratha, prince of an ancient line, born with a soul older than his body. From his youth he was haunted by the dryness of the earth, by the silence of the rivers that should have sung. He walked through parched valleys and felt in his chest the same ache that stirred within Ganga above. His ancestors had fallen to dust, their spirits unpurified, trapped between realms because the holy waters had never touched their bones. It was said that only Ganga herself could free them. Only her descent could cleanse their souls and restore balance to the world. And so Bhagiratha's life became a prayer made flesh. He renounced the comforts of his palace, the glitter of mortal ambition, and clothed himself in humility. His devotion was not cold nor distant. It burned through him with an intensity that was spiritual and sensual. He did not merely worship Ganga, he yearned for her. His meditations were not of words, but of breath, rhythm, and surrender. Each heartbeat became an invocation, each whisper of wind a promise. As he knelt upon the scorched earth, his voice rose through the thin air like a thread of longing, winding its way to the heavens where she drifted.
The cosmos held its breath. Even time seemed to slow, caught between her desire to descend and the universe's need for balance. Creation teetered on the edge of transformation, waiting for a single drop of her essence to fall. The silence that followed was not emptiness, but anticipation, a sacred hunger that vibrated through every plane of being. And within that silence, she felt something stir, a whisper, faint yet deliberate. It came not from the heavens, but from below, a prayer shaped by devotion and desperation. The sound brushed against her essence like fingertips on water. It was not loud, yet it carried the weight of lifetimes. It was a call not to her divinity, but to her heart. It promised purpose, connection, surrender. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since her birth, she trembled. The world below shimmered in her sight, its deserts glowing with faint light, its rivers asleep within the bones of the mountains. The wind rose, brushing her like a lover's breath, urging her downward. Every particle of her being yearned to move, to flow, to embrace the waiting world. Yet still she hesitated. For descent meant transformation, and transformation meant the end of what she had always been. Could she bear to lose her celestial purity for the touch of mortal soil? Could she bear the weight of longing fulfilled? The gods watched in silence. Some pitied her, others envied her courage. Shiva alone understood the depth of her conflict. Though he remained still, His gaze turned inward, as if waiting for destiny to speak. Ganga looked once more toward the parched earth, and her light shimmered with a softness that bordered on sorrow. The heavens darkened around her, not with shadow, but with expectation. Her body began to pulse, her currents swirling in slow, hypnotic rhythm. She was no longer merely a goddess of purity, she was desire incarnate, suspended between restraint and release. Each moment stretched thin, trembling with possibility. The earth quivered beneath the weight of waiting. Mountains lifted their faces to the sky. The winds carried whispers of her name across barren lands. Every creature, every leaf, every stone seemed to sense the approaching change. And above them all, Ganga floated in luminous stillness, the embodiment of divine yearning. Her descent had not yet begun, but the world was already changed. In her hesitation, there was music. In her longing, there was life. The boundaries between heaven and soil blurred, and the distance between God and mortal became fragile as mist. Ganga lingered there, poised between worlds, a droplet at the edge of eternity. Her radiance shimmered like a promise, her silence louder than thunder. The heavens ached with the weight of her decision, and the earth dreamed of rain. In that suspended breath between what was and what could be, the universe waited, thirsty, trembling, alive, for the first sigh of the river goddess to fall.
The gods watched him in silence. They saw a mortal whose devotion transcended fear, whose reverence approached love. In Bhagirath there was no arrogance, only yearning. He did not seek power or favor, he sought union between heaven and earth. His faith was desire purified, a hunger that sought not possession, but communion. His prayers were soft, but their persistence eroded even divine indifference. Each day he offered his heart to the goddess, unguarded, unashamed, and the rhythm of his devotion began to pulse within the currents of the cosmos itself. Far above, Ganga heard. His name, his breath, his longing reached her like a song beneath her skin. His devotion was unlike the adoration of the gods. It was human, trembling, alive. It spoke to something in her that had always been silent. When she felt his prayer, she felt her essence stir, her stillness fracture. It was as if the dry earth and her liquid heart were calling to another across eternity. She began to move in subtle rhythms, her currents responding to his pulse. Between them formed a bond unseen but undeniable, the harmony of two beings separated by creation's design, drawn together by the gravity of need. Yet the heavens trembled, for Ganga's descent could not be taken lightly. Her flow, unbridled, would shatter the earth she longed to touch. Her beauty would cleanse and destroy in the same breath. The gods feared her passion as much as they revered her purity. And so they turned to the one whose calm could temper the storm, Shiva, the ascetic lord, who sat in eternal meditation upon the mountain peaks, his mind as still as the void between stars. Shiva was silence made form, the stillness that balances the dance of the universe. His hair was night itself, woven with rivers of light and the dust of galaxies. The serpent coiled around his throat,
the crescent moon resting upon his brow. All spoke of paradox contained in peace. He desired nothing, feared nothing. Yet even he, in his boundless calm, felt the vibration of Bhagiratha's devotion and Ganga's restless stirring. The sound reached him like a distant song, the yearning of heaven and earth, of goddess and man, of flow and restraint. In Shiva's still heart, compassion awoke. He understood the necessity of balance, that divine desire must be guided, not suppressed. Without his intervention, Ganga's descent would break the world. With his embrace, it could transform it. He became the point of meeting, the vessel through which creation's passion could flow without destruction. He did not call her down, not yet, but his awareness turned toward her. His stillness became invitation. His meditation deepened, preparing to receive the storm.
And so the trinity of longing was formed. Ganga, divine and fluid, yearning to give herself. Bhagiratha, mortal and steadfast, yearning to receive her. And Shiva, eternal and unmoving, the channel through which their union could become creation rather than ruin. Their destinies, like currents of the same river, began to weave toward convergence. As Ganga looked down once more upon the mortal plains, she saw Bhagiratha kneeling beneath the sun, his body fragile, his faith radiant. She felt the pull of his devotion wrap around her like invisible hands, soft yet insistent. For the first time, she understood what it meant to be desired, not for power, not for fear, but for love. His prayers touched her not as flattery, but as surrender, and she, radiant with divine pride, felt herself melt into compassion. She whispered through the sky, her voice a breeze that brushed his face. Bhagiratha shivered, sensing her presence, though his eyes remained closed. Their connection deepened, divine and mortal, bound by an intimacy that transcended touch. Her longing to descend met his longing to rise, and between them the air trembled with promise. But desire, even divine, must find harmony, or it devours all it touches. Ganga's essence was too vast, Bhagiratha's devotion too pure, the balance too fragile. Only Shiva, in his infinite restraint, could cradle such force without breaking. His calm was the counterpoint to her motion, his stillness the shore against which she would eventually break. The heavens glowed faintly, as if the stars themselves felt the tension of their coming union. The uncontainable river goddess, the mortal whose love had summoned her, and the god who would stand between them. It was not yet time for descent, but the threads of destiny were already tightening. In the space between heartbeat and silence, between devotion and surrender, the three waited. Ganga shimmered like a promise in the sky, Bhagiratha kneeling upon the trembling earth. Shiva sat in infinite calm upon his peak. The world hung between purity and passion, serenity and turbulence, and the river, poised above creation, listened to the rhythm of two hearts calling her name. High above the trembling world, Ganga drifted in shimmering unrest. Her essence,
once tranquil as starlight, now rippled with contradiction. She was a daughter of the heavens, radiant, pure, unyielding, yet her heart pulsed with longing for the mortal realm. The pull of devotion rising from below was irresistible, a tide against which her pride fought in vain. Each time Bhagirath whispered her name, her current stirred. Each prayer he breathed traced invisible ripples through her body of light. She felt him not as a sound, but as a vibration within her very being, a warmth that burns softly in her divine depths. Yet pride held her fast. She was no mere stream to be summoned by mortal lips. She was the celestial river, born of Brahma's own breath, sanctified by creation itself. To descend was to risk defilement. To touch earth was to surrender her purity. But the longer she resisted, the more her desire grew, swelling like a storm within her. She felt torn between the serenity of the heavens and the wild call of life below. Within her, compassion battled with pride, love with divinity. She was at once the giver of life and the guardian of distance. The gods watched, sensing the tension coil tighter with each passing day. Her radiance dimmed not with sorrow, but with heat, the fever of indecision. The heavens themselves began to pulse with her turmoil. Stars flickered, clouds trembled, and the air quivered under the weight of her hesitation. Even the constellations seemed to lean toward her, waiting for the inevitable surrender. Below, Bhagiratha's devotion only deepened. Seasons passed, and his body grew thin, his flesh marked by the austerities of faith. Yet his eyes held the same light, the same quiet fire that had first reached her. He prayed not with words, but with the rhythm of his breath, each exhale carrying her name. His longing was not desperate, but patient, sensual in its stillness. He did not demand, he invited. His devotion was a form of love so complete that it blurred the boundary between worship and desire. In his solitude, he imagined her descent, how the sky would darken, how her silver form would shatter the silence of centuries. He dreamed of her flowing over the land, of her voice singing through valleys, of her touch reviving the dust beneath his feet. Sometimes he felt her presence hovering above him, a cool breeze against his fevered skin. And though he could not see her, he knew she was near, the goddess of water, the embodiment of grace, bound by the same yearning that consumed him.
His prayers began to change. No longer were they pleas for salvation alone. They were confessions of longing. If you descend, may I be the soil that cradles your flow, he whispered. If you bless the earth, may my soul be the first to feel your touch. The words rose through the air, carried by devotion, and when they reached her, Ganga shivered. It was as though his voice had brushed her skin. She felt her divine composure falter. The pulse of the mortal prince stirred something deep and ancient within her. Not just compassion, but attraction. His humility became a mirror for her own desire to be needed. For the first time, she imagined herself not as celestial mist, but as water touching skin, as light breaking into droplets, as life felt rather than seen. It frightened her, this hunger to give and to be held. Her pride whispered warnings, but her longing drowned them. She yearned to fall, to pour herself into the world that awaited her with open arms. Yet she feared what would follow. If she descended in her full force, her beauty would become ruin, her tenderness destruction. Her conflict grew unbearable, her body shimmering like a storm contained within glass. Lightning of divine emotion flickered through her translucent form. Her currents rose and fell in rhythms that echoed the beat of Bhagaritha's heart far below. Every time he knelt, she felt her resolve weaken. Every time he prayed, her restraint thinned. She hovered between surrender and restraint, between pride and love. It was then that Shiva, high upon Mount Kailash, opened his eyes. His meditation had long been deep as the ocean's floor, but even he could not ignore the tremor passing through creation. He felt Ganga's turmoil, the rising flood of her desire, the danger of her descent unbound. Within his stillness, he saw the vision clearly. If she fell unchecked, her impact would crush the earth, her power too vast for mortal soil to bear. Yet her yearning was sacred, her flow necessary. Without her the world would wither, without restraint it would drown. Shiva's role was not command, but containment, the sacred act of balance. In her he saw divine passion, in himself divine stillness. He knew that only through his embrace could her descent become creation instead of chaos. But to hold her meant more than power. It meant intimacy, surrender of another kind. He would not master her, he would receive her, guiding her flow without extinguishing her essence. In the silence between heaven and earth, Ganga felt his awareness touch hers, calm, vast, magnetic. It was not like Bhagaritha's devotion, which burned like fire. Shiva's presence was cool and infinite, a stillness that drew her toward peace, even as it awakened new desire. She sensed that only through him could she descend safely. Only through him could her passion be transformed into grace. And yet this realization deepened her conflict. To descend through Shiva's hair, to rest within his locks, would mean surrendering to his control, the very opposite of her freedom.
She wanted to give, but she wanted to choose how. She wanted to flow, but she feared being contained. The thought of his calm stirred both reverence and rebellion within her. She imagined herself pouring upon him, cascading into the labyrinth of his hair, feeling his stillness absorb her fury. The vision was both sacred and sensual, a dance of dominance and submission between divine forces. The heavens shimmered with tension, the stars dimmed as if holding their breath. The wind that carried Bhagiratha's prayers now trembled with divine anticipation. Even the mountains below felt it, a subtle vibration in their stone hearts, as though the earth itself awaited her arrival. Bhagiratha's faith reached its final crescendo.
His voice, hoarse but unwavering, rose one last time. Ganga, merciful one, descend not for me, but for the world that waits. Let my body be your path, my soul your vessel. I ask nothing but to see your light touch the earth. His surrender broke the last barrier within her. The pride that had anchored her to the heavens dissolved into compassion. Yet compassion did not erase her desire. It deepened it. She no longer longed merely to cleanse the world. She longed to feel it, to flow against the contours of existence, to taste the dust of mortal life, to give herself completely. Her light began to swell, her body of water trembling with contained force. The sound of her movement filled the heavens, soft, rhythmic, like the breath before a sigh. Shiva felt it reach him and closed his eyes once more. The time was near. He would receive her descent, cradle her storm, and channel her beauty into creation. Between them stretched a tension as vast as the sky itself. Ganga radiant and untamed, Bhagirath devoted and aflame, Shiva silent and immovable. The heavens quivered beneath their intertwined desires. Every element, wind, stone, light, seemed to lean toward that invisible center where longing and restraint would soon collide. The world waited on the edge of transformation. Ganga hovered above the clouds, her body glowing with divine heat, her currents pulsing like a heart too full to contain itself. Below, Bhagiratha lifted his eyes for the first time in years and felt her gaze pierce through eternity. In that instant, goddess and man, purity and passion, heaven and earth were bound in the same trembling breath. And in the stillness that followed, the sky itself seemed to sigh. A whisper of water, a promise of descent. The heavens quivered as the first tremor of surrender rippled through Ganga's form. The stars dimmed, veiling their faces from the brilliance that unfolded across the sky. Her body, once calm and luminous, began to move with purpose, not drifting, but descending. She was no longer just divine water. She was longing made visible, motion turned to music. Every drop of her essence glowed with the heat of awakening, each shimmer a note in the symphony of release. A low hum spread through creation, the sound of her fall. Clouds swelled and broke apart as her light poured downward, a silver torrent tearing through the stillness of eternity. The heavens seemed to gasp as her descent began, and for a moment all boundaries between sky and earth dissolved. The air itself became liquid, heavy with her presence. It was as if the universe exhaled after holding its breath for eons. She felt herself stretch, expand, dissolve. The restraint that had bound her for ages unraveled in one pulse of divine ecstasy. She fell, not in violence, but in surrender, a slow, sensual cascade through layers of light. The friction between her descent and the firmament sent waves of energy through every realm, and creation shivered beneath the touch of her passing. Her essence streamed in countless currents, each one carrying a fragment of her soul. Shiva waited. Upon Mount Kailash, he sat in infinite stillness. His closed eyes reflected both emptiness and compassion. Around him, the air vibrated with the force of her approach. His locks, dark as night and deep as eternity, stirred with the whisper of her coming. He was the unmoving center of a universe in motion, the silence that could receive the flood without breaking. Then she reached him. The impact was not collision, but communion. Water meeting stone, desire meeting restraint, chaos finding its shore. Ganga cascaded upon Shiva's hair with the force of 1,000 worlds, her brilliance exploding into a halo of silver mist. The sound was both thunder and whisper, both creation and surrender. Her flow wrapped around his head in spirals of light, each strand of his hair cradling a torrent of her divine energy. It was as if the stars themselves had fallen to dance within his crown.
For a heartbeat, she struggled. The flood within her longed to break free, to rush uncontained into the waiting world. But Shiva's stillness absorbed her fury. His locks curved and wove around her, taming her wild descent without diminishing her power. In his embrace, her storm found rhythm, her chaos found pulse. What had been violent became graceful. What had been overwhelming turned tender. The heavens trembled with their union. The sky wept light as her waters tangled in his hair, gliding across his skin like liquid silk. The mountain beneath them vibrated with the sound of flowing divinity. Shiva's calm became the vessel for her passion, his silence the channel through which her desire found form. Together they were movement and stillness, fire and coolness, the eternal balance of creation itself. For the first time since her birth, Ganga felt peace. The tension that had tormented her dissolved into the rhythm of his stillness. She no longer feared her power, for it was held, not imprisoned, but understood. In Shiva's presence, she felt the safety of surrender. Her essence softened, flowing gently now, her torrents transformed into melody. She felt his strength not as command, but as trust, and in that trust she found freedom. Their union became the language of existence, a sacred dialogue between two forces meant to complete each other. Every droplet of her body glowed with gratitude. Her currents slid through his hair, caressing his shoulders like ribbons of moonlight. The air was thick with energy, neither purely divine nor mortal, but something between. In the mingling of their essences, the cosmos tasted its own heartbeat. Below, Bhagirata felt the change before he saw it. The sky opened in a soft burst of radiance, and from the heights light poured like 1,000 veils of liquid silver. The wind carried her fragrance, cool, sweet, electric. He fell to his knees, his heart trembling in awe and love. He felt her presence like a touch across his soul, and tears rose unbidden to his eyes. It was as though the earth itself had begun to breathe again. From Shiva's crown, the first streams of her descent broke free. They flowed down in gentle cascades, winding across the mountain's face, forming rivers of light that glimmered with divine warmth. Each stream carried her voice, soft, melodic,
alive. She whispered to the stones, kissed the roots of trees, brushed the faces of flowers just beginning to bloom. Wherever she touched, life stirred. The world drank her as one drinks love after drought.
But her descent was not merely blessing, it was transformation. The earth, unaccustomed to such tenderness, trembled beneath her. The air quivered as if drunk on her presence. Mountains shone with moisture, valleys filled with light. She was no longer the untouched goddess of the heavens. She was water incarnate, naked and divine, pouring herself into the waiting arms of creation. Her purity mingled with dust, her brilliance softened into reflection, and in that merging, she found a beauty more profound than perfection, the beauty of becoming. As her rivers spread, the world awakened. Trees swayed as if sighing in gratitude, and even the stones seemed to hum with life. The clouds danced with her mist, and the winds carried her name in endless echoes. Every stream that flowed from Shiva's hair was a thread of intimacy woven between heaven and earth, between divinity and mortality. In that sacred moment, Ganga understood what she had sought all along. Not worship, not adoration, but connection. To descend was not to fall, it was to give. To touch imperfection was to become whole. Her pride dissolved into tenderness, her divine distance into embrace. She was both the giver and the given, the river and the thirst. Shiva opened his eyes then, the still ocean of his gaze meeting her shimmering flow. Between them passed no words, only understanding. He had received her storm and given her peace. She had brought movement to his stillness. Their union was not possession, but balance, the eternal dance of energy and repose. As she continued to flow from his locks to the earth below, Ganga's laughter filled the sky, soft, radiant, alive. It was not the laughter of pride, but of release, of knowing she had become what she was meant to be. The heavens rejoiced, the gods bowed their heads in reverence. Bhagirath, standing amid the rain of divine light, closed his eyes and whispered her name like a prayer fulfilled. The world was reborn. The rivers of her body carved paths of life across barren lands, and her song became the breath of all living things. In her descent, chaos had found form, divinity had found tenderness, and creation had rediscovered its pulse. And though she was now bound to the earth, Ganga did not mourn the heavens she left behind, for in surrender she had found freedom. In being contained, she had discovered infinity. In touching the mortal, she had become eternal. The sky shimmered where she once dwelled, but it was her waters that now mirrored the stars. Each ripple carried the memory of her fall, each wave the echo of her divine sigh. The earth, once dry and silent, now throbbed with her heartbeat, a living hymn of water
and light. And so the goddess flowed, endlessly renewed, her descent not an ending, but a beginning, the eternal embrace of power and peace, of passion and surrender, of heaven finally touching the trembling skin of the world. The earth drank deeply of her presence. Everywhere Ganga flowed, the world awakened, as if remembering an ancient promise whispered long ago. Her waters moved like silk over stone, threading through valleys and plains, curling around mountains with affectionate persistence. Each current shimmered with the memory of her descent, the warmth of Shiva's touch, the devotion of Bhagiratha's prayer, the surrender that had turned chaos into music. The land beneath her thrummed with life. Seeds that had slept for centuries broke open at her passing. Trees bent toward her in reverence, their leaves glistening with drops of divinity. Villages arose along her path, drawn to her as lovers are drawn to light. The people, unaware of the full magnitude of her being, still felt her intimately, in the coolness that kissed their skin, in the song of her flow that lulled them to rest. They called her mother, yet her embrace was more than maternal. It was sensual in its tenderness, infinite in its patience. Her touch lingered wherever she passed, awakening memory not only in soil and stone, but in the hearts of those who knelt to her waters. Bhagiratha stood at the banks where her first currents reached the mortal realm. The wind moved through his hair, carrying her scent, rain, jasmine, and something beyond mortal naming. His eyes followed her shimmer as if tracing the line of a dream now made flesh. He had longed, pleaded, and sacrificed, his devotion carved into the fabric of time. And now she was here, not a vision, not a promise, but living, flowing truth. His body trembled with awe. For years he had envisioned her descent as salvation, an act of divine duty fulfilled. But seeing her now, radiant and free, he felt something deeper, a quiet joy, a serenity born of love fulfilled not in possession, but in harmony. She was beyond him, yet within him. Each breath he took seemed to carry a drop of her essence. His devotion no longer burned with yearning. It glowed with peace. He knelt, his forehead brushing the wet earth, whispering a prayer that was more gratitude than petition. "You came," he murmured, his voice breaking like a leaf caught in her stream. "Not for me, but through me." He understood then that his role had never been to summon her, but to open the way, to create space in the world for the divine to touch the living. His longing had been the bridge.
Ganga heard him, not with ears but through the rhythm of her own flow. His devotion pulsed within her, the echo of his prayers now mingling with her current. She flowed past him softly, her surface rippling in acknowledgement, her whisper curling around him like a breath. "You are the reason I remember compassion," she seemed to say. "You are the reflection in which I see myself gentle." Her descent had changed her.
Once fierce, radiant, and untouchable, she now moved with grace learned from surrender. Her waters no longer thundered with pride, but hummed with wisdom. She carried life, yes, but also memory. The memory of her own transformation, of finding beauty in touch, divinity in closeness. Each wave she cast upon the earth was both blessing and confession. I am not only heaven's child, I am the world's pulse now. Shiva watched from the peaks, still as the mountain he adorned. His gaze followed her journey as she wound her way across the plains below. The locks that had once held her still shimmered faintly with her light, a reminder of their sacred union. His lips curved in the faintest smile, not pride, but contentment. In her, his stillness had found motion. Through him, her chaos had found peace. Now, as she moved beyond his reach, he felt no loss. The rhythm of her current beat in harmony with the silence of his heart. He breathed, and the winds stirred gently, carrying with them the resonance of his blessing. Wherever she flowed, his presence followed, unseen, but always near. Together, though apart, they maintained the balance of the world. She, the endless motion of love. He, the eternal stillness of understanding. The sensuality that once burned between them now softened into something quieter, deeper. The intimacy of trust, the serenity of coexistence. The divine fire had cooled into a steady glow, and from that glow arose a new world. Ganga's waters became the veins of the earth, carrying Shiva's calm strength through her endless movement. Their union no longer needed touch or form. It lived in the space between, the invisible harmony that sustains creation. As her rivers spread, they mirrored the sky above. At dusk, her surface caught the sun's fading fire, turning into a molten ribbon of gold. At night, she became a mirror for the stars, her body scattered with points of light. She was the breath of heaven made visible, the bridge between what is seen and what is felt.
Those who came to her waters found more than cleansing, they found remembrance. The old and weary dipped their hands and felt youth stir in their veins. The lost gazed upon her current and saw reflections of who they might become. Even the air near her banks seemed charged with forgiveness. Lovers met beneath her shimmer, speaking softly, unaware that their words carried the rhythm of her pulse. In her flow was the music of renewal. Bhagirath walked along her edge for days, following her course until she reached the ocean. There, where her sweet waters kissed the salt of the sea, he saw the completion of her journey. The horizon glowed faintly, the air thick with the scent of rain and dawn. He understood then that this was not an ending, but a circle, the celestial returning to the infinite, the divine remembering its source. He bowed low, his forehead touching the wet sand, and whispered, "May your touch never cease." Ganga's waves reached for him, curling around his fingers in answer. She carried his blessing into the sea, and the ocean trembled with the joining, fresh and salt, heaven and earth,
longing and fulfillment. High above, Shiva closed his eyes. In the rhythm of her flowing, he heard the eternal hymn, the sound of creation breathing in unison. He felt no need to contain her anymore. She had become her own balance. She was both soft and strong, gentle and vast, the embodiment of divine duality resolved. Time passed, but her essence never faded. The mortals who bathed in her waters felt traces of that first union, the whisper of Shiva's stillness, the warmth of her surrender, the devotion of Bhagirath woven into every droplet. And though ages would come and go, her song endured, flowing through generations like memory carried in the veins of the earth. Her descent had once been an act of divine intervention. Now it was love in motion, quiet, ceaseless, eternal. The sensual had become sacred, the sacred tender. Through her, humanity and divinity were no longer separate, but reflections of one another. Water and light, passion and peace, giver and receiver. And so she flowed on, timeless and luminous, her journey now the world's heartbeat. The sky leaned close to kiss her surface, mountains bowed in her path, and the sea waited patiently for her return each day. She was no longer just Ganga the goddess. She was Ganga the eternal rhythm, the embodiment of harmony between heaven's longing and earth's need. In her endless flow, the world learned that divinity does not dwell above, but moves among, whispering through water, breathing through wind, living wherever love finds a form to fill.
There is a quiet that follows fulfillment, not silence, but a hum beneath existence, the sound of everything remembering what it is. In that quiet, Ganga continues to flow, her body of water a hymn that never ends. Each ripple carries a truth older than language, that longing, when guided by love, does not destroy, it transforms. Her descent, once an act of divine defiance, has become the rhythm of creation itself, the proof that desire, when surrendered, becomes transcendence. In the vastness of her journey, the echo of her origin still lingers, the heavens she left behind, the pulse of Shiva's stillness, Bhagiratha's unbroken faith. But they no longer feel separate. Their essences mingle like mist and rain. The divine is no longer distant, nor is the mortal unworthy of touch. Through her flowing, the world learned that the sacred and the sensual are not opposites. They are two notes of the same melody, one trembling upward, the other descending in grace. Desire, in its purest form, is not hunger, but remembrance, the soul's yearning to return to what it already knows. Ganga's fall was never a punishment, nor a loss of status. It was a homecoming. In surrendering her pride, she rediscovered the fullness of her being. To touch earth was to feel the completeness of heaven. To descend was to rise in another way, inward,
deeper, eternal. Her waters continued to murmur along the mountains and plains, whispering to all who listen that transformation begins with longing. The river does not question why it flows. It knows that movement is its purpose. So too does the soul move through desire toward awakening. Bhagirath's devotion was not only a call to the divine, but a mirror for humanity's search for meaning. His love, shaped by perseverance, turned yearning into path. Through him, the mortal became bridge, and in that bridge, the world found connection. Shiva, the eternal witness, remains in tranquil majesty, his presence woven into her flow. His stillness is the quiet heartbeat beneath her current, the reminder that strength does not always roar. In holding her without possession, he embodied the purest form of love, the kind that gives freedom as its highest gift. Together, they became the eternal lesson of balance, motion and rest, passion and peace, desire and restraint, all harmonized into a single breath.
Everywhere she flows, the air carries this memory. Those who bathe in her waters feel a pulse beneath their skin, faint but familiar, as though the divine once touched them and never fully left. Her coolness seeps into the bones, cleansing not only the body, but the weight of all that clings to it. Each drop holds the story of surrender, of fire turned to gentleness, of a goddess who learned to love by falling. At twilight, when her surface mirrors the fading light, the world feels her melancholy, that sweet ache of beauty that knows it cannot last, and yet continues to give itself fully. The birds dip low, their wings brushing the gleam of her waters, and the wind hums softly through the reeds. There is a peace that feels almost human, the peace of something divine choosing to belong. And perhaps that is the final truth of her descent, that even gods yearn to be touched, to be known, to flow through imperfection and find grace within it. Divinity, untouched and distant, is incomplete. It is through surrender, through the willingness to feel, that even the eternal becomes whole. Bhagirath's story ends in gratitude, but his spirit lingers in every prayer whispered at her banks. He is not remembered for command or conquest, but for devotion, for having loved the divine enough to call it into the world. And Ganga, answering that love, proved that compassion is the highest form of power. Her descent was not the fall of purity, but its awakening, the sacred discovering that to touch what is mortal does not taint, but redeems. In her endless journey, every curve of her flow retells this truth. Mountains remember her arrival, oceans await her return, and between them humanity thrives, cleansed and reborn with every tide. The river sings, her song soft yet ceaseless. Longing is not sin, it is the soul remembering its source. When night settles, her waters shimmer beneath the stars, reflections of the heavens she once called home. But now those stars seem to gaze downward with affection, as if proud that one of their own chose to live among the breathing, the fragile, the real. The light above and the light below meet in mirrored reverence, and the world glows with the quiet knowledge that love, when true, never ends, it only changes form. There is a melancholy in her beauty, yes, but it is not sorrow. It is the tenderness of something eternal wrapped in the rhythm of time. She moves on, never clinging, never stopping, her touch fleeting yet transformative. And though each wave dissolves upon the shore, her essence remains, reborn in every drop that falls from the sky, in every tear, in every act of faith.
Sometimes, when the world grows silent, her voice can still be heard beneath the hum of life, a whisper curling through dreams and rivers alike. It reminds all who listen that love is not possession, but motion, not certainty, but surrender. Her waters have touched kings and beggars, lovers and mourners, and in all of them she leaves the same trace, a quiet remembrance of the infinite hidden in the simple act of giving. The children who play in her shallows do not know her story, yet they laugh with the same joy that sparked her descent. The old who bathe in her at dawn do not see her as goddess, but as mercy made visible. And in those simple gestures, a handful of water poured over the head, a prayer whispered into the current, the divine continues to breathe through the mortal. Ganga has not ended her journey. She flows still, within and without, in every act of devotion that rises from the earth. Ganga's descent, then, is not a single event, but an eternal motion, the divine pouring itself endlessly into the human, love flowing ceaselessly into form. Every moment of yearning, every act of surrender, every gentle touch becomes part of that same current. We are all, in some quiet way, the river remembering her fall. And as her waters continue their endless song, the world listens. Mountains hold their breath, oceans bow in acceptance, and mortals lift their hands in silent reverence. For within her flow lies the promise of transformation, that through longing we are made humble, through surrender we are made whole, and through love we find the infinite reflected in the most fleeting of ripples. The river does not end where it meets the sea, it simply becomes something vaster, unseen but enduring. So too does the divine in us, the spark that seeks, loves, and releases. Ganga's descent is our own story, retold in water and light, the journey of the sacred learning to dwell within the human, the endless fall that leads not to destruction, but to peace. And in that peace, where passion softens into devotion and movement melts into stillness, the heart hears her final whisper, gentle, eternal, and full of love, flow and be free.